As everybody knows by now, last Monday, late into the night, I mean, the United States lost the fight to keep nationalist China in the United Nations, and the Albanian resolution to admit communist China to the UN was passed, and Taiwan was sort of booted out. It was a moment of what's been described as, quote, a shocking demonstration of undisguised glee and personal animosity toward the United States. The cheering and so on that went on. My next guest is the American ambassador to the United Nations. He was the man responsible for keeping them in. He had been charged with that, Taiwan, that is, and as such headed the losing campaign to keep nationalist China seated. Will you welcome, please, a gentleman who may have overcome his depression by now or not, I don't know. Will you welcome, please, Ambassador George Bush. Do you feel like a loser?
No, I don't feel like one. I wasn't happy with the verdict. I think the UN set a dangerous kind of unfortunate, took a step backwards in this question of expulsion. But life goes on, and it's going to be a tremendously challenging place to be in the weeks ahead, as you can well imagine. I just think the price tag was pretty high.
Well, now, this was, you sort of took the blame publicly.
Well, I think, I'm arrogant enough to think I didn't make too many mistakes, but I think that the President and the Secretary of State did everything they possibly could do, and I think our mission made an excellent diplomatic effort. There was a tremendous amount of activity in the capitals, and thus I think it certainly was my responsibility. And if somebody's looking around for someone to blame, you know, I'm there. But I'm not sure that, from a very personal standpoint, I certainly did everything I could think of, and expect people can find mistakes. But I think we did a lot of things right, and I think we were up against a pretty difficult proposition, as it turns out.
What point did you know you'd lost control?
You know, we went in there, actually, in terms of votes, thinking that we were, you know, there could be slippage in some of the things, that representations that we had might have been weaker than others, that we thought we could win it by a vote or two. It was that close.
A vote or two?
Yeah, really. Yeah. That just it's so hard, and well, of course, you're only dealing with 131 countries. But I'd say about after the debate, after the wrapping up of the speeches, we began to get reports of some slippage, and you know, the things that we thought were final weren't, and so it became clear before the procedural votes were taken. There was only one key vote, Dick, and that was the important question vote, the non-expulsion vote. The Albanian resolution itself had the important question vote, non-expulsion vote carried, would have required 2/3, would never have had those majorities, because many people were, it's kind of like a political thing, you release delegates almost. I mean, people were scurrying for cover at that point. The important question, the non-expulsion vote, was the key vote at the United Nations Monday night.
How did they pull one over on the U.S. by, if that's in fact what happened, I mean, that's the way it's seen, by getting the vote that night when everyone seems to think if it had been the next day, President Nixon would have gotten what he, at that point, wanted?
Well, I wouldn't agree with that conclusion, because I'm not sure that time at that point was working in our favor. This was something I talked to the Secretary of State about at night. But we did think the vote was going to be the next day. And one of the things at the UN that's very difficult to pin down are the procedures. I mean, it's very difficult to it's an emotional, political body, and it's very difficult to, in an orderly fashion, move the procedures that you think should be moved. There were several amendments offered at the last minute by two different ambassadors, the Saudi Arabia ambassador, the ambassador from Tunisia, that just kind of came out of a clear blue sky and kind of caused pandemonium and confusion. But and they were very serious about their effort and have every right to do it. But it made an orderly moving to, say, adjourn, if that was what was in our minds, and as I say, I'm not sure we would have gained anything, much more difficult.
So you're not sure that if...
No, I'm really not sure that if we'd had 12 hours more, that we could have picked up an extra vote or two, or, well, what we needed was 55, and we needed the change of 3 people. And I'm not sure we could have done that in another 12 hours. Frankly, I'd like to.
Let's talk about the cheering and dancing in the aisles. Now, President Nixon made a statement that he was very upset by that spectacle, and many people who make a point of not agreeing with anything President Nixon says happen to agree with him on that. They said that was a disorderly insult to the, to this country and so on and so on. And but now another view of that cheering is that it was not against Taiwan largely, that the Chinese needn't be offended, but that it was against you representing the U.S. for their strong-arm bulldozing tactics, and the fact that those had failed was what they were cheering about, that the big old USA could no longer twist people's arms.
Yeah, I expect there was some of that, but the thing, it wasn't glee and clapping that troubles the ambassadors today at the UN, or the Secretariat, or the members of Secretary General U Thant's staff. Many ambassadors have come up to me who were on the other side and said, well, this was an ugly spectacle. It wasn't glee. I mean, there was plenty of that there, but there was a certain mood of ugliness, and the thing that troubled me about it was, and this, I'm not being recriminatory, we're going forward, not backwards, but you've asked a very question that's on people's minds. The thing that troubled me about it was, here were the Republic of China, decent men, having suffered indignity after indignity in the speeches, throwing them on the garbage heap of history, decent men sitting there. And then in their final moment of ignominy, not having the institution, the UN, not any delegation, but the UN as a body, not having the common decency to treat them as human beings. And this is what troubled me, and maybe maybe I shouldn't get so emotionally involved with people, but there's a way to do things with grace and dignity, and the organization simply did not do that. Now, as far as the United States goes, sure, there was some of that. I got up to speak afterward and was hissed from the audience, and we can take that. We can take care of ourselves. I didn't like it. I think it's beneath the dignity of the UN, but again, we can take care of ourselves. But what troubled the ambassadors there and the reporters there and the members of the Secretariat there was the mood not of glee. Heaven's sake, some people have been working for this for a long time, and in victory they should be gleeful. But there was a certain ugliness there. There was a certain kind of, you carry the iron sheet, and I'll have this forked stick, and we'll kind of jab one another. And there was and some of it was just simply the culmination of victory after hard work. But I'm afraid it was a little uglier than that, and I think that's what the presidential spokesman was trying to say. And it's not a partisan thing. It's not aimed at any nation or anything like this, and the UN, in my view, will recover from it.